Matt, how you doing? This is episode 4.
Man, big 4.
We still haven't come up with the title yet.
Not quite, but I know that we're really, really close to actually being able to publish these, and then once they're all published, we'll get that poll out, we'll get that vote out, and we'll get that name out.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for that.
I'm excited for it too. If anything, it's just been fun making these, even if nobody really gets a chance to hear them. I've still been enjoying this, and it'll go up at some point. It'll just see if we can find its audience. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, and I know we have an anxious audience, but and with that, I know we have a big question today. We talked last time about a big topic about why does evil exist, and we're kind of continuing that today, right?
Yeah, we're going to continue that. We're going to talk, I guess the main question that we wanted to talk about was like, what does God do about, or why did bad things happen, basically, off a continuation from last week. But we will be talking about that, but we'll also bring up our story time. We will also do some choose it or lose it towards the end.
Gotta do that choose it or lose it, man.
We gotta get the hot
I'm
takes.
excited for some of these, so I hope you're ready at the end.
No, I don't know.
Don't pour yourself out in the first part yet.
Oh yeah, we'll see how it goes. Well, Matt, I'm tired of this chit chat. Let's just get right to it. Okie dokie. So, Matt, today we are going to talk about why do bad things happen. I know that last week we talked about what does the Bible say about evil, and this is a kind of continuation off of that. We were able to hit on a lot of key points, kind of like in the existence of God, the goodness and the power, but we wanted the love of God specifically. But we wanted to hit on those a little bit more in depth and kind of customize it more towards why are bad things happening, especially while we're recording this, coronavirus is going on. Thought to be a very bad thing happening. People are dying from it. It is very scary. I still wear face masks when I go around places.
I mean, we see a whole world basically shutting down in so many different ways. I mean, I know right now it's been exciting just being able to Google. As in Texas, we're starting to have a little bit of relief just looking at where can I dine in. I mean, it's just starting to happen. It's starting to feel like normality again. So.
It's starting to get a little normal, but there's still we still haven't found a cure.
We still have a lot of tension.
We still haven't got a vaccine. There's still a lot of things we gotta be curious about, and there's a lot of theological questions that can come from that of why do bad things happen.
And especially in talking about last week with God being a loving God, well, if God loves us, yes, we understood why evil exists, but why does he, if he is good, if he's all-powerful, if he knows everything, why does he still allow bad things to happen when he could do something about it? That's what we're talking a little bit about today.
Yeah, and I guess to get things started, I would say a majority of people, and I think I touched on this at the very beginning of the last episode, that a majority of people fall into kind of these 4 categories for when it comes down to the existence of God and evil. So whenever a bad thing happens, somebody will either say, well, God doesn't exist, and that's why this bad thing happened. They could say, well, God does exist, and he has the power to do something about it, but he simply just doesn't care. So he's all-powerful, but he's not all good, is what somebody may say. Somebody might also say, God does exist, he cares, but he doesn't have the power to do it. So he's all good, but he's not all-powerful. And then there's the camp that I know that I find myself into, that God does exist, God cares, God has the power to do something, and he is doing something. So from that, we wanted to kind of ask 4 questions, basically, and from those 4 questions, that'll help you decide where you're at in those categories that I just said. Those 4 questions being, is evil and suffering an argument against the existence of God? The next one, is evil and suffering an argument against the goodness of God? The next one, is evil and suffering an argument against the power of God? And then I know that you have a question about the knowledge of God. So, any thoughts on that so far?
I mean, there's just a lot there. And I know that this talk is going to be, our audience is mostly to our youth, but we realize anyone at Solid Rock Church or anyone on YouTube or anywhere
Yeah.
that's going to be listening to this can listen to this. And so I know that I'll be talking about heavy thinking. I think you're bringing
I'll be bringing on more theological kind of thoughts about it.
And we realize that this is a big question, and we're going to do the best we can to answer it as simple as we can and yet still do it justice, which is why we bring in your big brain.
Well, I know that I have this at the end of my notes, but I feel like saying it now. At the end of the day, Matt and I, when we come to these discussions and topics, and we record them in front of you guys to listen, this is the thoughts of Matt and Jordan.
The best of our abilities
Yes.
and knowledge.
I highly encourage each and every one of y'all who is listening, do some of your own research.
Absolutely.
Look at the things that we're talking about. Hear some of the quotes that we have. Take a look at that for yourself. Listen to some of the Bible verses that we bring up. Look and see for the context yourself. We're going to bring up some of those contexts and how things fit in and work, but we always want everybody else to also do their own research on this. Don't just take Matt and I's opinion.
We are not God.
Yes.
We are man, which means we are fallible and we can make mistakes. And man, from being a youth pastor for over 8 years at this point, there are lessons I go back at and I'm like, I don't know how I ever preached on that or taught that, because that is just, that was not exactly right at the time, and it's definitely not right now. And so I know I've had to make corrections, and so I know I'm continuing to grow. I know you're continuing to grow. It's just how we do things. So.
Well, from there, we would like to kick it off to the very first question that I proposed, which is evil and suffering an argument against the existence of God? Now, there's a strong possibility that we may just have an entire episode dedicated to does God exist?
That right there is just, we could easily spend this whole time, I think, on just that question. And I know that there's people who will go through that process. So I think today, we mention it, we acknowledge it is a possibility, but we're going to really focus in on these other 3 questions. We'll do another episode specifically to deal with that question, more than likely on episode 5.
Yes, I think there's a couple of things that we could answer about that question right now in helping you with this. And I think one of the ways that I kind of wanted to starting the answer of this question was actually written by the author C.S. Lewis. He had a quote in one of his books that he wrote, and this was written whenever he. It says C.S. Lewis was once an atheist because he was an atheist because of the evil that he saw in this world, and he wrote in his book. As an atheist, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how did I get this idea of just and unjust? A man doesn't call a line crooked unless he has an idea of a straight line. And what was I comparing the universe to when I called it unjust? And I know that was something that we hit on in the last episode, that God is the perfect standard of good. And from that, with that perfect standard, comes an evil with it. Now, God did not create that evil.
But it's simply the lack of that good.
Yeah, it's the way that I define evil is what should not be, and God was what should be. He was the perfect definition of what that is.
So, I mean, this question is a really good one. We'll spend the next episode answering does God exist? But right now, we're going to focus in on those next 3 questions that you had brought up, Jordan. So, give us the second question again.
Yeah. So the second question that we wanted to talk about is evil and suffering an argument for or against the goodness of God? So I guess kind of a quick question, something that we had talked about last episode. Does God create evil?
And the answer is no, God does not create evil.
Mm-hmm.
Evil is just the absence, again, of good. We covered that in the last one. And so if God creating stuff, did he create evil? No, he did not. Man introduces evil. And so with that, if evil exists, does that mean that God is not good? Right?
Yeah. I know that evil exists because we exist. The moment that Adam and Eve took bite of that apple was the moment that we had and chose in our own free will to reject God. He was willing and ready to give us that love, but we decided that something else was more desirable at that moment. And out of our own free will and volition, we chose to reject God, thus creating that evil, that sin, that ability to do bad things happen and spurred from that moment.
And I think in that moment, I think God's goodness is really amplified in the aspect of, we've all gone through a breakup. And if someone broke up with us or chose a different person, man, I'm hurt. If there was another girl and she chose another guy, I'm hurt. I then can walk away, clean conscience, move away. But God said, no, I'm going to love you despite you rejecting me. I'm going to love you. I'm going to pursue you despite you walking away. And we see so much throughout the Bible of God's goodness of character, of pursuing us time and time again, being able to see that even though we're evil, even though we keep doing horrible things, he says, I love you. I don't love what you're doing, but I love you.
Yeah, I think in my head, what would be truly evil would be if God created us to punish us.
There you go.
But instead, what God has done is he entered into our pain and our suffering. God the Father entered into our suffering by watching his perfect Son be crucified on the cross. Jesus Christ had suffered more than anybody else in history. Why? Because to rescue us...
Because he was perfect?
Yeah.
Because he did everything he was supposed to do? Because he never did anything wrong?
Because he wanted to rescue us back into a relationship with God and to rescue us from a world full of evil for all eternity.
And do we not show our colors by condemning him and killing him and murdering him despite that perfection, despite his love for us, despite all what he wanted to do? He wanted to save us, and we just destroyed him.
So evil and suffering isn't an argument for or against the goodness of God. God didn't create that evil. He didn't create that suffering. It was something that we brought on. But with that happening, with us making that conscious decision to reject God, he still entered into our suffering. He still entered into our rejected people that we were, and decided, I still want to engage in a good relationship with them in order to save them from this for all eternity.
And not only just to engage with them, but to restore them, to bring us back into a right relationship with God, and to be able now we're sons and daughters of God. We're in his family. We're not just his creation, but we're his sons and daughters.
That's a good God to me. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, that is a God that takes those horrible situations and makes something beautiful out of them.
I feel like that'll be an episode 2 someday.
Well, we're going to move on. I know that we're going a little quick, but we're going to go on into question 3 now, which is evil and suffering an argument for or against the power of God? And I think we often look at bad things happening and point to God saying, why aren't you doing anything? Like, what's going on here? And I think God is looking at us saying, I'm already doing something. If you were to think about it, I know, and I know that this may be a little hard, but 9/11, that's one of the most tragic events in our world's history. And I know that for some students of ours, they were born after the fact of that.
Yep.
But I remember as 6 years old what happened. Yep. Think of but really, truly, 9/11 was the worst thing that had happened to us in the U.S. In our generation. But think of the thousands of airplanes that took off and landed every single day before 9/11. And think about all of the airplanes they had taken off and landed since 9/11. There's so many people in this world that have greed, that are selfishness, that are full of lust, that have pride, that are all sorts of messed up, where evil can run rampant all over this world. But we have a God who is doing everything to keep it under control, to help us to not we don't have 6 9/11s happening all the time. We have one, not because God messing up, it's because
God is stepping in
Yeah.
and protecting and providing. And kind of like you touched a little bit earlier, bad things still happen to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Can God do something about that? He always does. Sometimes that bad thing is prevented,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that bad thing is used for good. I mean, we're talking. We bring up COVID a lot because right now in the world, that is a worldwide pandemic issue. And yet, as a pastor, I've seen a lot of awesome and amazing things come from COVID. Now, every time I've spoken, I always say COVID it's bad, it's horrible. People are dying. This is a real thing, and we see a lot of that in the media and in the news. But something you might not see in the media or the news or even hear about is some of the good things happening about communities coming around and supporting each other, people who are helping their neighbors, people who are going out there and making a difference. I know in our own church, I mean, we're a small church in San Marcos, and through this, we have grown leaps and bounds in our media and our technology. We've been able to do some awesome things that allow us to talk and share God's truth around the world now, just not just in San Marcos. There's been some good just here locally.
Mm-hmm.
But that only comes from a good God who can do that thing, who is powerful.
Yeah, the world is bad, but it's not as bad as what it could be. Like, God has this amazing ability to make beauty out of these evil things. And he is able to take those horrible situations and make them productive. I know that specifically within our world, there are tons of celebrities that are raising hundreds of millions of dollars for local charities when it comes down to COVID relief, as
Hospitals.
well as Feeding America, as well as helping homeless people. I know that there are tons of I'm part of the streaming community on Twitch and Mixers, and I know that there's tons of streamers that are doing charity streams where they decide, you know what, I'm gonna stream the longest game of Rocket League, and then that ended up turning into a charity stream where they raised over $5,000 from just something that happened. Now, yeah, $5,000, it sounds like a drop in the bucket, but there are people out there actively trying to make things better in the midst of all this coronavirus.
And that $5,000, I'm pretty sure that didn't happen before this, right?
No, yeah,
That was something birthed from this, which
And-
we see a lot of.
Yeah, because people have this. Whenever everything goes awry, there is always people always will band together and unite, and it just depends on the leader that we have in front to guide and lead those people in the right direction.
And it's a good thing that we have a good God who is our good leader.
Yeah, amen to that.
All right. So with that, again, sorry, we're trying to be short and purposeful with each question. We're moving on to the last question now, right? Or is
Yeah,
this
which will bring up your question about knowledge.
okay. So we talk about God being all powerful, God being good, but another point is God all knowing, because if God is all good and all powerful but not all knowing, then He is a God that can make mistakes and screw things up. And so with that, just kind of wanted to talk briefly about how we know that we have a God who knows everything. So we know that God knew COVID was coming out. He knows the bad things that happened, 9/11. But he still is able to do stuff with that and be able to use that in the long run.
Yeah, I think an example here for Solid Rock Church, and you can stop me if y'all don't feel comfortable with talking about this, but there was a member here at Solid Rock Church that had passed away, and because of that passing, had ended up bringing on a good donation of money towards Solid Rock Church. And because of that, we've been able to continue these ideas of doing technology, of being able to broadcast and live stream in the midst of all of these coronavirus things. And that had happened before this had even started. And that was just a huge blessing for Solid Rock Church to say, okay, now we need to kind of figure out what the vision of church is going to look like. And it's looking like church is going to have to be a lot online for who knows how long. What is it going to take? Well, we don't have any of that stuff in order to make that happen. And because of that financial blessing, we were able to make that happen. We were able to bring on a tech guy. We were able to bring on myself. We were able to live stream and be able to get some equipment in order just to make a good, homey feeling stream of the church. And I know that we're continuing that this upcoming Sunday. We're going to be live streaming.
Having the first live stream while having live church.
Exactly. And that'll be the very first time that's all happened. And it's because at the very beginning of all this, God specifically for Solid Rock Church said, hey, I know that this is coming up. I know that this is going to be a big burden on what church is going to look like. But here is something to help you guys persevere and push through.
And not only just the finances, but this happens before you get here, but this has been 3 years in the making of sitting down with some of the other pastors, and we've been wanting to get to this exact point of being able to to have church be on a live stream, to do podcasts, to do talks like this. But finances was an issue, and time was an issue, and talent was an issue, and then God just brought you in this year that allowed us to provide some of that. So just another quick one of talking about how God is able to know things, because if we don't have a God who's all powerful, who's all good, who's all knowing, then we as humanity suffer. But because we do have a God that's all three of those, we're in a great place.
Yeah, and I think I want to continue on just a little bit more on adding a couple extra notes. I think I really wanted to bring up this quote that I had grabbed from the Tim Keller book, A Reason for God. And this goes along with God taking these terrible situations and making something beautiful out of them. Tim Keller wrote, if you have a God great and transcendent enough to be mad at because he hasn't stopped evil and suffering in this world, those bad things happening, then you have, at the very same moment, a God great and transcendent enough to have a good reason for allowing it to continue that you can't know. And you can't have it both ways. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is a big factor in all of this. If the resurrection happened, which there is a lot of substantial historical evidence validating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, if Jesus Christ rose from the dead and then he had conquered evil. He had conquered sin. He had conquered death. And that has massive implications for us as Christians. Because there is going to be a day coming where Jesus Christ is going to reverse all of these effects that happen from Genesis chapter 3. The fall. A day is coming where he is going to permanently eliminate this evil, where no more bad things will happen.
Amen.
And I think if you want to, feel free to look at Revelations 21, 1 through 5. I'm not going to read it out now, but it's an outline of what that's going to look like when Jesus comes. But no, at the end of the day, God does exist. He is all powerful. He is all good. He is all knowing. And we, at some day, will get what we truly want, which is evil wiped away. Now, like I said, this is my opinion, this is Matt's opinion, but I urge you, do your own research, look into some of these things, because Matt and I believe the Bible to be true, and we believe the Bible says these specific things, and that's kind of our roundabout answer to why bad things happen.
And make sure that if you have any questions, any comments, leave them, man. We'd love to look at them. We'd love to further explore. And I mean, just today we had that first question about God's existence. We'll cover that. That's a whole nother topic. And then, so make sure you guys leave comments, leave your questions. We encourage them all. We accept that. We appreciate them all, and just thank you so much.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and tell some stories.
Story time. this is one of my favorite times since I'm long-winded and love stories. And because of that reason, we're going to let Jordan go first today with his story because, he's in the making of becoming long-winded and enjoying stories.
Yes, I know. I know that I may have talked a lot, but you're going to hear some more.
So, Jordan, share with us, what is your story?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up this story a little bit. I know that I was a little heavy last week, and I may be continuing a little bit more of that trend.
You look fine to me.
But I wanted to bring up a story that's been happening recently. And it kind of goes along with some coronavirus things that have been happening. And it's a ministry story because, well, that's what we want to talk about. I specifically want to talk about a student of mine that was going to the home group that I was leading while I was in my college ministry.
Okay.
Now, this student, I'm not going to use names. I'm just going to say student and he. He was brought on in a very interesting way. At the very beginning, he felt uncomfortable with one of the home groups that we had at the church. At the time, we had about 5 home groups, and he was a part of one of them. And then during the Christmas service a few years ago, maybe like fall 2017 or so, or 2018, he came up to me and asked, "Hey, would y'all be interested in letting me join y'all's home group? I kind of feel like this other one over here, I'm just not really getting along with. I feel like there's some stuff going on. I think it'd just be best for me to try and find a different group." That ended up being a longer conversation because, I just kind of wanted to know what was going on. At that time, I wasn't a leader, but I just wanted to make sure that him coming over into a different home group would be okay. And I kind of made that decision outside of some of the people that were on the decision team for that home group. The decision being, okay, well, how about you come over to our Christmas party that we're having, just kind of get a feel for who we are, and just see if you want to continue being here. So I invited him without telling anybody else. I felt like that was okay, because at the end of the day, I was like, he's a cool guy. I will invite him over. He came over to the Christmas party. We had a good time. He wanted to stay. That's good. I'm happy about it. The issue, I guess, is that he is somebody who doesn't have a lot of social awareness, and sometimes doesn't respect physical boundaries, and can also be a little aggressive, and doesn't feel afraid to speak his mind. I felt comfortable enough to have him a part of the youth group. A part of the home group. But some of the other leaders just felt like I just don't know how to interact with him because he is just different. He's not acting the way that most people act. I had that patience, so I bonded with him really quickly. I had him join into the life group, which is kind of like the smaller version of home group, where it's just 4 of us and we just talk about life groups. And just had a really good, fruitful conversations from that. He bonded well with the group. There were a couple instances where things were a little rocky, just because of his views on how things would happen. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is he recently decided to step away from the church. Not church altogether, but the church that had that college ministry. He felt like it would be the best thing for him to do because it just seemed like nobody was able to listen to him and listen to him well. One of the big reasons was during the coronavirus and all this stuff happening, we had to do online services, as Solid Rock churches had to do. And home groups would have to also be online during Zoom calls and stuff like that, similar to what we're doing for youth group. And he was a very wanting physical presence person. Online is okay, but if he sits in front of a Zoom call all day, he's going to hate it. And that started to drain on him. And going to those Zoom calls, he eventually stopped going to those Zoom calls for services. He eventually stopped tuning in to the live streams of the services. Because he felt that I really need a church that is okay with me physically seeing them. Because the college ministry at the time didn't feel comfortable having anybody physically close, out of just safety of everybody else with coronavirus. And he felt differently. He felt like I really need somebody, and nobody was willing to answer that call. At this point, I was starting to slow my role on the college ministry and starting to focus more on the youth group in Solid Rock Church at this point. So he eventually started to lose somebody like me who was really fighting for him a lot. And there was less and less people really doing that for him. It wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that after a Sunday service, he had brought on some of his political views on how he felt like things should be run and how I want to be able to see people and nobody felt comfortable wanting to see him. Not because of who he is, but just physically they don't want to see him because of the coronavirus. He got very upset about all that. He felt like he was getting attacked. And him and I ended up having about an hour and a half phone call about after that night. And that phone call consisted of him and I tearing up about the thought of him saying, I've been battling a lot with leaving this church because I know that I've been here for all of college, for 4 years or so, and I've done my best to fit in with people, but it seems like people don't want to help fit in with me. And this is my only real friend group, and I just don't know what I'm going to be able to do outside of you guys. And during that conversation, I had to just say, what does that look like? What else is going on in life? I know that I talked about this last week, but I had to ask a very question of, are we just talking about you stepping away from the church right now? Or is there more going on? Is there other thoughts that you're having? I know that you keep saying goodbye forever. Is this really goodbye forever? Are you talking about potential suicidal thoughts here? And I had to be upfront and honest and ask those kind of questions because he was really, really torn about losing this place. But he felt like it was in his best interest because nobody was willing to take that step for him. I did my best to take that step, but I couldn't take it all the time because he does take a lot of attention and a lot of warehound, and he was also somebody that would take a lot and wouldn't really give too much out. So I don't know. I think the reason why I wanted to share this story is, man, in ministry, you're going to have some students that are just rough around the edges, and you're going to have some students that don't know socially how to interact with people, don't know how to respect those physical boundaries, can sometimes say things that in their mind, that's what I needed to say at that moment, but it really could hurt somebody that's listening to it. And man, whenever you have those kind of students and people interacting in your group, you just got to show some extra love and care towards them. Because at the end of the day, whenever I would talk to God about him, every time I felt like God was saying, I really need somebody on his side. Because right now, nobody is on his side. I, God, want to be here on his side, but he won't come see me. Can I have you do that for me? I did my best. I guess it just wasn't enough. But I can't take that responsibility. I know that I tried everything that I could. And since then, he did, after that phone call, I said, see you later. He said goodbye. I've been in contact with him a little bit, but it's one-sided to where I send messages and he doesn't reply. To my knowledge, he's still doing okay. But, man, it gets a little hard sometimes. here in ministry. But I want to encourage you that in the midst of all of that, things are going to be okay. Bad things are going to happen. Situations are going to arise. And God's going to be able to make something beautiful out of that. That individual, maybe just at this time, he can't fully comprehend everything that's going on. And right now, there needs to be a moment of separation. I'm hoping and praying to God that he's got, and I know that he does, he's got something planned for that guy, maybe a year or two, or even sooner down the line, of a church that's going to be able to love for him and care for him way more than I ever could. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of just wanted to share that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Man, I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I will limit it because you're so right, man. I mean, ministry is painful, and if you're not getting messy, you're not in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, I was told when I first was brought on into ministry, one of the first words of wisdom I got was, some of the people that are closest to you will hurt you. Mm. And there is no pain like someone that you've been ministering to, that you've been caring for, that you've been spending countless hours with, and then for some reason something goes wrong and they leave, or something happens, or despite your best efforts. Man, it hurts. Mm-hmm. It really hurts. But let me encourage you in the aspect of, you did do everything you could, and there's a season. Man, as you shared that, I can think of just a few of my own stories. I'm not going to do that today, but just do know that, everyone that goes into ministry goes through this. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sorry you're going through that right now, man. I know it hurts. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours of sleep, how many tears I've cried for this exact reason. But just do hear, you did well. You did the best you could. It was well, and good job, faithful servant. Because I know that you did. I know the person you are. And it's hard not to take this personally, but don't take this personally. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I would encourage you in is, God's got this guy. Mm-hmm. Whatever's going on, God does not need you. He chooses to use you, and you are a tool in the season of this guy's life. And no matter, someday maybe he'll look back and he'll really be able to be appreciative and thankful for this. But man, that's not why you and I got into this. It wasn't to be thanked. Yeah. This is, quite frankly, a thankless job. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing whenever we do have people in our corner that are there to encourage us and thank us. That is always, man, one of those. If you're listening and you are part of this youth group, if you're a part of any youth group, man, encourage your youth pastor, your youth ministers. They need it, and any of your kind words mean a lot. Mm-hmm. But man, one thing that stands out to me in this, that as you're going through this, there's there's only so much you can own. Being able to delineate what's on them, what's on you, mm-hmm. and being able to do that. When you look back at this, is there anything you would have done differently?
Maybe just done more one-on-one interactions with him, maybe have some more discipleship time. I don't know. Just spend some more time with him. There were multiple times in a lot of the meetings that I had with the leaders of that home group where they would bring up things that were against that individual, of just like, hey, we got to figure out this because this happened, or blah, blah, blah. And I never really felt like what I said earlier, like he had somebody on his side, and I always had to be that representative of just like, hey, I need some it's okay, guys, like bad things are going to happen. And I had to keep on reiterating that. And I guess I don't know, I guess I just wish that I had spent more one-on-one time with him.
Maybe, and that's something you take into your next one. You did the best you could. Maybe that's a tool that'll help next time, and maybe you would have, and we still would have gotten here, because I know I've done that too. Yeah. So just know, man, it's okay. God's got him. God's got you. Mm-hmm. And just be encouraged, because you are where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Even though I might not see the situation or the solution up ahead, I know that God does, because he's a good God. He's an all-knowing God. And he can see that, and he's got a plan in place before I even know about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Well, that's been my story. I know that that's been a little heavy. I know, Matt, you got a story that you would like to share about, I guess, is this about ministry, or when did this happen?
So this is going to be about ministry, and man, I really want to share this for you because I know that this is going to happen. Because I've been where you've been, and you know, I can't tell you how many times I came in from youth group. I'd have youth group on Wednesday night or whatever night, and I came in Thursday morning totally prepared to just resign because it was just that bad.
Really?
Where I mean, there were so many days I went to sleep thinking I'm probably going to quit in the morning. Just life happens. But it's funny how God can use that. So particularly when I first get out here, man, you know, I was trying to build up a youth group. There wasn't a youth group at this church. And within my first few years, man, wrestling with, am I really called to be in ministry? Am I really called to be a youth pastor? There was this one kid, this one gal, that was in my youth group, but not really in my youth group. She was a friend of one of my youth who came every week. Her friend was one of those ones that just always brought people, always encouraged people, always just came, had a great time with her. And then, but every now and again, she'd bring her best friend. And it took me a while to realize pretty much every time her best friend came, it was when I felt at my worst. It was just like, tonight's going to be horrible. This is just going to be bad. I suck as a youth pastor.
Aww.
Just a lot of these things. And it would crack me up because she would come and every time she showed up, she'd be always like, man, you're so awesome. You're amazing. That was the best lesson I ever heard. It was always just like this super timely blessing, encouragement. And then that would take me through for a few months and she wouldn't be here. And then I'd be feeling cruddy, and then God just used this student. And the thing I guess I want to share in this is the time where it really hit me that this is all happening. Because as this is happening, I'm not really noticing it. But she comes during a time where I do a series I call God and Science. Not God versus science, but God and science. And I talk about how God and science work together. And she is a science nerd, so she came to one of those talks, and I'm just talking about how science doesn't disprove God nor combat God, but how cannot the creation point back to its creator? Well, in this lesson, it inspires her, and she is going to do a project on it for her school.
Interesting.
Doing this project, her teacher liked it so much that she's recommended to compete at a state level, and she's going to win a scholarship based on taking what she got from that lesson and then going in and doing research, doing a bunch of other stuff. To this day, I fully don't understand what she did exactly, but because the next time I see her, she tells me that months later, oh yeah, your lesson inspired me to do this. I'm now about to compete at state for a scholarship.
Wow.
I'm like, well, praise God. I had no idea that this ever existed. The last time I saw you was there. And then the next time I see her, I got a scholarship to go to college on this report. And she goes, Matt, that really meant a lot to me. That lesson really helped change the way I looked at some things, and it helped change my perspective on some things. Now, I don't say this because I do any lessons good. I really think I'm getting better. But what amazed me was being able to look at that. I'm like, man, every time. That's when it hit me of every time God kind of highlighted to me. Every time you're feeling cruddy, I've sent her. Because I have other youth, and I have amazing youth that encourage me, support me, who have been with me for a long period of time. I have a good youth group. But particularly just on those low days, those low times, God would just continuously send that affirmation of, through her, you're where you're supposed to be. That got me to stay in ministry, because I forgot, the book was called Pastoral Leadership Is, and that's the name of the title. And in the very first chapter, it talks about a bunch of statistics. And if I recall correctly, it says the average ministry lifespan, just ministry in general, is 2 years. You look across the board for 2 years to be in it, and this was within my first 3 to 4 years. And so I'm like, I made it a little bit past that, and it was awesome to see how God just affirmed in that time and be able to build that into it. So I shared that to let you know, even when you don't know what you're doing, God can sometimes use that. And not only that, you don't know in our job, it takes years, sometimes decades, before we ever get the ending of the story, before we ever get to see the benefit.
Yeah.
And sometimes we never know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the shortcomings that comes with doing ministry so young, is that I just haven't lived long enough to kind of see where everything's going to go from there. But I look forward to hearing more stories about what students' interactions have been like since then. I know that I have a couple other stories from students that have gone remarkably well, and they still think of me as a best friend and great leader towards them during that college ministry time. But yeah,
But every time that painful one, that's the one that you remember. And man, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Life, just keep pushing. Because, I've been there, and I'll probably share some of those stories down the line too.
Yeah.
But man, I get you, and I sympathize with you, and
ministry can be hard. But
ministry is hard.
Ministry is hard, but it's so much fun at the same time.
And it is so worth it.
It's so worth it. Getting the chance to see a kid come to Christ is winning the Super Bowl every time for me.
Amen. So I'm taking it that I'm hearing in Choose It or Lose It, you would choose to be in ministry.
Yes, I would choose to be in ministry. Dang it, Matt, you stole the Choose It or Lose It for the very last episode. Which, I don't know, that may be way far in the future. Who knows what's going to happen.
Amen. We'll see how far that is. That could be episode 5. That could be episode 555. But with that, let's move on. Let's move on. Choose It or Lose It.
So let's start. I can start.
Okay.
Yeah. How about we only do 2? I think we're running a little low on time.
Sounds good.
But let's just do 2. So I'm going to start with a huge controversy.
Oh boy, here we go again.
And I just want to know what your thoughts are, because I have to admit, this is a little late in the game. This has already happened. Some of this controversy thing has a little blown over, but it's still being sold. And I just want to know, choose it or lose it, Popeye's chicken sandwich.
Okay.
That happened like 2-3 months ago. No, last year. And
it was the end of last year.
I think 2 weeks ago was the first time that I actually ate one, because I decided, I'm going to give it a shot. So now I'm well equipped to choose it or lose it, but I want to know your thoughts.
Man, from the beginning, first off, I'm not the biggest chicken sandwich person in general.
Oh my God.
I do love fried chicken. I love chicken. But, I have yet to have a Popeye's chicken sandwich, and that's really for 2 reasons. Number one, I really like their just spicy chicken tenders in general.
Yeah.
And then 2, I don't believe in messing with God's design plan of Chick-fil-A sandwiches versus all others. So, with that, I'm going to lose the Popeye's chicken sandwich.
I totally get that. And man, Matt, I gotta say, this was a really big problem for me when I ate that chicken sandwich.
Were you feeling a little sacrilegious?
Because I am a hardcore Chick-fil-A fan. You know me. I've been a Red member since 2017, and I'm gonna be a Red member till 2021 is what my app says right now. And the Chick-fil-A is a big time for me. And man, there's nothing better than that Chick-fil-A sandwich. But man, Matt, I had that Popeye's chicken sandwich. I had the spicy one, and I don't like pickles. I don't get pickles on the Chick-fil-A, and I don't get it on the Popeyes.
You ruined my choose it or lose it for the day.
Oh, what are you gonna say, pickles?
No.
But man, Matt, that sandwich was really, really good.
Okay.
Man, because the bun is thicker. It's like the bottom bun is like as big as like Texas toast, like a good like 1/3 of an inch kind of thick bun, and then the top with it too. And then the breading just makes it so nice and crunchy. I know that with a Chick-fil-A sandwich, since they wrap it in that tin foil, if you wait long enough, sometimes it gets a little soggy in there. It's still really good, don't get me wrong. But man, I had that chicken sandwich, and whatever sauce they have, it's maybe like some spicy mayo or something like that they had on it. Because the chicken wasn't spicy, but they have like some spicy sauce on it. That's how they call it spicy. It was really good, and I would probably consider doing that over a Chick-fil-A sandwich. The only problem is I'm going to choose the sandwich, but I will definitely still go to Chick-fil-A way more often than I'll go to Popeyes. Chick-fil-A, far and none. Customer service is amazing. The people are wonderful. Popeyes, when I went there, their drive-through speaker was broken, so I had to yell like extremely loud. And then the moment I got up to the window, the lady almost threw the chicken sandwich into my car because she was just ready for me to be gone. So I'm just saying, there's a big difference between Chick-fil-A and Popeyes there, but still, that's a pretty dang good chicken sandwich. So I'm choosing it.
Fair enough.
What about you?
So I mean, I'm glad you bring that up because you're right. That's a hot topic that was behind the curve. I have one that I was going to bring up. Didn't know if it was going to be that behind the curve. Not so much a major controversy, but I know that as a gamer, you enjoy your video games, and there's a game that I'm just now looking into that I'm thinking about choosing, maybe losing, and it might depend on what you say about the game. So whether I do choose it or I lose it. So Jordan Bolt with Division 2, the video game. Division 2, it's the tactical shooter. Man, would you choose it or lose it?
So mad. There's a story that comes along with it. A small story. It's not that long. For the moment that Division 2 came out, it was an instant buy. But not just for me. It was for one of my best friends that we have for game night. And then I bought the game as well twice for myself, and then one for Leo, the guy who I was living with at the time. So during game night, the three of us could all play that game together. I am choosing Division 2. I really enjoyed that game. So if you don't know what it is, it's basically just a tactical shooter. It's a third-person game. It all takes place in New York during the middle of a pandemic called the green flu, or the money flu, because a guy put a deadly virus on dollar bills and then handed those out during Black Friday. That's kind of the story of it all. And then you kind of run through Washington, D.C. as a pandemic-filled, overrun, post-apocalyptic kind of area. And Division 2, I really enjoy that game. I'm choosing it. And I have actually bought it another time since then because I got that for my Xbox. And then when I got a PC, I also bought it for my PC. Now, given the PC purchase, I think was like $3 because they had a special for it. So it was definitely worth it. But I played that game from beginning to end at least twice. And then on my PC, I've gone about halfway through this campaign again.
So, and purchased it, what I'm counting is 3 times.
3 times. And I've beaten, I've got at least 3 characters. 2 of them are almost maxed out. One of them for sure. The other one is close to, and the other one's about halfway there. So nice. I like Division 2.
Well, I know that a friend and I are looking into it, and so, wanting to do something just the two of us, and so I'll be choosing it too. I know I played the beta. My friends, we enjoyed it, but it just didn't quite hit what we all wanted. Now, this friend in particular that I'll be playing with, he really, really enjoyed it, I found out. And man, for me, it was kind of on the edge. So I'm going to choose it right now. I know sometime this weekend I'm going to buy it and I'm going to start playing with him. But I'll give my, I guess, real official review later, since all I did was the beta testing. But from what I recall, I mean, it seemed like it was a fun game. But for me, I know it's always the experience with my friends. And so it's a great testimony that you enjoyed it so much. You brought it up for 3 people, so I'm sure me and my friend will enjoy it as well.
Yes, it's a very fun get-together with your friends kind of a game. But I also played almost 90% of the game by myself too. So I've been very much enjoying it. Well, this goes along a little bit more with video games.
Okay.
But I want you to answer this in a ministry context.
Oh boy.
So I want you to get your would I let my youth students play this at church kind of a hat.
At church?
Or just like would I
encourage my youth to play this game?
Would I feel comfortable saying that the youth are playing this in the email blast to the parents?
Okay, now you're getting me nervous. All right.
I want to know, would you choose it or lose it? And the reason why I'm bringing this up, on Epic Game Store today, which I know I'm dating this episode, Grand Theft Auto 5 just became free for people on the PC. And that game has been out since 2013. I skipped school to play that game when it first came out in 2013. And it's still very widely popular today. And I would just know, in a ministry context, would you choose it or lose it on Grand Theft Auto 5?
Well, I did not know that was happening. Thank you, Jordan, for bringing that to my attention. Maybe I'll have to do a whole separate podcast just on that. In a very short way, man, it's an open world shooter. I know that, oh good Lord, there are so many videos, so many mods. There is so much in that game. I mean, it's huge. It's been around a long time. It's done well. Man, I would really struggle on a ministry perspective to be able to encourage it.
Yeah.
Just in a lot of it in its general concept of man, there's just a lot there. I know that it's open world, and any open world game, that's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good potential, and there's a lot of bad potential. Where I know that people just I'm just gonna go and destroy all the cop cars, or I'm just gonna go and mess with cops, or because in that game that's one of the main everyday force you experience, and you can tick off pretty quickly and be able to have some fun with car chases and driving around hitting civilians, and so there's all sorts of stuff in that. Man, from a ministry perspective now, because it has been out there, so many mods. Can you play it with a lot of people? That would be the only redeeming point to me of if it's free, it's something you could play with your youth. But I know in my own personal email to my parents, to my youth group, I would not be encouraging this game. I will take a hard lose it on this one.
Yeah, and I gotta agree with you there. The main reason why I want to think about it in a ministry context is, for actually today, Matt and I are recording this on a Friday. Tonight, we're doing a video game night with our youth group.
Yeah, playing all sorts of video games.
We're going to play all sorts of video games. Now, Grand Theft Auto 5 is not on the docket of games to play.
No, it is not. Parents, if you're listening, it is not. If you see your kid playing that and we are not aware of that, that is not on us.
We did not condone that.
Nope.
But, man, I have to say, the game is pretty interesting. I feel weird saying great because there are a lot of moments. Now, I've played this game through the entire story at least twice. And the story definitely has some very weird and edgy spots. There's some stuff that I would not recommend for somebody who is not mature. It is an M-rated game.
For a reason.
So I would not suggest this to kids that are not ready for a mature style game, and that's why I would also struggle to say that we're gonna plan on playing this as a youth group in a video game night. Like, I don't even know if I was doing a one-on-one time with a student of mine if I would want to play Grand Theft Auto 5 with them. I don't know if I would do that. I know that in story you can't really play with anybody, but in the online, that's the thing that's taken off. That's what everybody plays. And online you can drive a DeLorean, like the flying ones, and it looks cool. Like, don't get me wrong, I know. And there's there's underwater cars and the James Bond vehicles. They
have
tanks.
A Megalodon.
Yeah, they have a private yacht that you can buy. It's a very interesting game, but when it comes down to a ministry context, it's hard for me to encourage that kind of a game because I know that it's very easy for people in a mindset to just say, hey, I'm really angry today. I'm just going to go in Grand Theft Auto 5 and just drive around and hit people because that's going to be my version of blowing off steam. And I feel like there's so many other better ways to blow off steam that are outside of you doing something like that, hitting polygons that are shaped like a human and they're supposed to act human-like. I know that you'll start to desensitize yourself. I know that I'm sounding like a boomer right now.
Okay, boomer.
But man, yeah, I would say in a ministry context, I would lose it. And I think altogether, I would probably lose it. I chose it when I was young because I was really excited about it. But right now, I think it's just it's gotten pretty advanced in what things that they do and the things that they let you do. So yeah, I think I'm going to lose it.
Okay. So this is going to be our last choose it or lose it of the day, right?
Last one.
We're doing a little bit shorter version. But so today, it is something that everyone partakes in one way or another. And, I partake in it in a certain way, but I'm really going to be focusing in on energy drinks today.
Okay.
I'm going to choose it or lose it. If you want to, I'm thinking of like the super energy ones, like the Monsters or like Bangs or
super energy.
The energy drinks that all youth say that they need.
Yeah,
or
rock stars,
and that stuff. If you want to focus in on one, I'm fine with that. But I would be interested in your take in an energy drink. Choose it or lose it for those specialized energy drinks.
Oh man, Matt. Well, I think I have to share this very quick story.
You're full of stories today.
The very first time that I ever drank an energy drink, this was the first time that a Monster was handed to me, was whenever I volunteered to help run in a 5K or something like that.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going with a lock-in. I was
No. A 5K.
That's another conversation.
It was a 5K run thing. And it was a volunteer thing, like raise awareness. I can't remember what it was for. But I know that there was a lot of people in my youth group that were going to it. So I decided, you know what, I'll go to it too. They had a Monster tent there that was supporting the run. And they were just handing out straight up free original Monsters. And I was like, I've never had one before. I see people drink it all the time. I kind of want to do it. And man, Matt, I can't tell you, the way that I look now is what I kind of looked like back then, and I'm a kind of hefty man. I drank that Monster in its entirety, and I ran that 5K in its entirety, and I did not break a single sweat. That thing messed me.
I don't believe it. No sweat.
I'm telling you, man, I was just passing people left and right. That was the first time that I had something that sugary and energy go into my body that I was just like, I'm ready to go. And I just bolted.
Bolted.
Yeah,
bolted. That is a
bolted.
bad pun, man.
And whenever I finished, I vomited.
I'm really now interested in how you choose whether choose it or lose it. Either way, I can see an argument.
Since then, I will lose it. I had it once. It was great. I ran. It was fun. But man, I am losing it. I don't care for energy drinks. I'm not somebody who needs them. I know that there are other people that I have to have my morning coffee. I have to have my morning Monster. I have to have my morning 5-hour energy. I don't really, I most of the time don't even eat or drink anything in the morning until about noon anyway. I'm not one of those people that needs to have something to get me going. So I'm going to lose Monster and Rock Stars and Bangs and stuff like that. I'm going to lose all that. That's not for me. What about you, Matt?
So I think the first time I took a energy drink, I did the 5-hour energy drink, and it was when I used to work at Academy Sports and Outdoors, and I'd have to work overnights. Mm-hmm. Only times I ever did those type of drinks. I've always enjoyed my coffee. I've enjoyed sodas, but I've never particularly did a major energy drink until then. Mm-hmm. Well, a few years later, after I did it for a few years, I started to have some heart problems. And I still have heart problems ever since then. I've never had an energy drink. In fact, I'm not allowed to have an energy drink anymore because of my heart. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily, I'll say, caused the heart problems, but I didn't have heart problems until then. I was an All-American athlete that just missed swimming in Division I swimming for a pretty big school. So when I started to wake up and have heart issues, again, I can't directly relate it to that. But I do know since then I'm not allowed to have those. I know that there, like you said, there's a lot of people, I need to have this, I need to have that. Man, I enjoy coffee. I really enjoy coffee. The hardest thing about this is not being able to have coffee every day like I used to do. But with that, I don't need it. It's more, I enjoy some of that caffeine, and it helps at times. Particularly for me, it's more in the afternoon. Man, I wish I could take naps between 1:30 and 3:30, somewhere in that slot. If I could have a 10-minute nap, I'd be super happy.
Yeah.
But that not always being the case, I make it through anyway. So I'm going to take a lose it on energy, on any type of those energy drinks. And I would caution people, because I know people that just slam those down. Please. Think about it. Think about it. Pray about it. Talk to your doctor about it. But I'll take a lose it. So
okay.
Man,
well, we're both losing it.
So man, I enjoyed doing that, Jordan. Another interesting and fun episode as always.
Yeah, another fun one. I hope that everything went well on y'all's end. It sounded great on our end. We had fun doing that.
As always.
But like we say in the past, feel free to comment down below. Let us know if you have any questions. Please feel free to like it. Share it with any of your friends. If you have some other friends in high school or middle school, or friends from work or other things that you just want to share something with in a ministry context, this is something that you can do. Something easy. I know that we're a little long-winded. We're going on about an hour or more now, but man, I'm looking forward to doing some more of these, and I hope that y'all enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time, episode 5, and hopefully in the near future you'll be actually able to see us and not just hear us, but we're working on that, and we'll see. At some point, our goal is to do this more in a video way, possibly. I know back in, I think it was episode 2, we talked about more of a, do you want this more in a podcast, or do you want this more on a video format? So we don't have the name yet. We don't have the results from that question either. So hopefully in the future, based on what you guys tell us, will help determine what we do next time. So
yeah. So let us know in the comments what you're thinking about that too. But yeah, well, let's wrap it up, man.
And we'll see you guys. Sayonara.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye.